Hey everybody, and welcome to Your Desk University, bringing you live learning with AEC tech experts. We have another really incredible show today. If you're trying to figure out how to do interoperability, you're struggling on managing any kind of data between yourself and your client or yourself and your consultants, I think you're going to find it fascinating. We're going to talk about Speckle. We have an architect, an engineer, and a software developer together with us. Also, don't forget to check out other shows. They're on our website, they're on the YouTube channel. You can really help us by hitting the subscribe button. We have a goal now, which I never thought we would reach, and that's 1,000 subscribers. Also, don't forget to go to our website and go to the bottom. You can join the Slack channel if you want to engage in the conversation. The speakers are in there, and you can keep talking with them later. And with that, I do want to go straight to our show, and we are going to be talking about Speckle. We have 3 incredible presenters. I'm going to put them on the camera now and do a little bit of an introduction. And Izzy is a software developer. She works for Speckle. Yes, thank you. Wave for us. She actually comes with from an MEP background, and like many of the people who watch, she started kind of augmenting workflows, working on things, and now she's going into full-time software development and really wanted to help the engineers that are struggling on the MEP side with things. So I'm excited to hear from her as she represents Speckle and what they're doing. We also have David Morgan in your bottom left. He's an architect. As we were talking earlier, he was sharing that he got to know Speckle because they were trying to figure out a web viewer and a way of connecting their data into Unity. So that's another way of using Speckle that I hadn't even known about. And David Koning, who you see on your right here, you can wave at us. He's a structural engineer. So the idea is we're going to see today how they can, interop between one office to another, and they're all going to be screen sharing. So it's going to be an active show. But David leads Arup's internal Speckle deployment, and he does a lot of teaching. He's really helps a lot of people, but he comes to that from also his own background delivering structural design. And one of his famous projects is the Sagrada Familia in Barcelona. So very, very fun to hear about those. With that, I'll turn it over to you, but obviously I'm watching the chat and I'm never really turning it over completely. So I'm going to be, throwing questions to you as we go. But why don't you guys kind of share a little bit about what you've got?
Sure thing. I'll start us off. So again, hi, I'm Izzy. I'm repping Speckle today. And let me share my screen. Hold 1 second. Cool. So let me start this off with just like a quick intro on what Speckle is and what we're about. So to start, Speckle is the open source data platform for AEC. Basically, Speckle allows you to free your data from various AEC software platforms to enable sort of quick and efficient sharing and collaboration. So before we get into the nitty-gritty of that, I'll give you a little bit of context. So Speckle was born out of our founder Dimitri's research project, which was started in 2015. This was originally funded through Horizon 2020 Marie Curie grant and grew within this consortium of academia and industry. So the topic of research was digital design communication, or more specifically, the roadblocks and friction within the digital design chain. If you want to dive into the nitty-gritty of this research, you unfortunately have to wait for this beauty to get published, or alternatively, just stick around for the rest of this presentation. But this research made enough of a splash that in 2018, Arup picked it up as a industry-sponsored project within the company. It was here that Dimitri and Matteo worked on it to help grow and improve Speckle and also grow the community around it. Then in early 2020, mid-pandemic, they decided it was the perfect time to launch a new company dedicated solely to the development of Speckle. So we're now a team of 4 engineers working full-time on Speckle alongside the many contributors from all across the world at many different companies. But what exactly does Speckle do, I hear you asking? Well, we are trying to solve a problem, which is that the AEC industry, as we've all probably experienced, is digitally somewhat disconnected. And this is due to fragmented and distributed data silos, software monopolies that kind of trap your data within proprietary files and tools, and things like legacy software that are incompatible with modern workflows. The way Speckle attempts to solve this is by providing a software-agnostic data platform for the AEC to foster collaboration and communication within the industry. So we do this through a growing collection of connectors, which provide the conversion routines to get your data out of native applications such as Rhino, Revit, Grasshopper, Dynamo, GSA, all this other stuff that you see here, and into a neutral data format that you can send wherever you want and receive wherever you want. This includes the web, which is another part of Speckle. This is the, oh, sorry, this slide is still connectors. But this includes the web, which allows you to view this data in 3D and also see who, where it's being received, look at the history, manage permissions, all these kinds of things. And because Speckle is completely open source, you can take any of this and hack on top of it. So for example, this is Arup Carbon, which is a tool that allows you to create carbon reports from Speckle data streams. Speckle is currently being used by a whole host of AEC companies, and we have a growing community of people in both industry and academia who are hacking away with it. And as a little extra note, Speckle 2.0 is our next iteration of Speckle, where we learn from all the lessons that we've learned from the development of 1.0 and make something even bigger and even better. So 2.0 is being developed with developers in mind to make it easier for you to develop your tools, conversion routines, and connectors on top of Speckle. We've already released a sort of developer release for the alpha version, and the alpha of our connectors will be rolling out within the next couple of weeks. Here's a quick plug. You can find us at these places on the internet. But for now, let's send it over to the two Davids for a quick demo.
All right. Well, I can start it off. Kind of give some input on where the design process.
And you're a little
starts.
quiet, so I think we
Oh.
there, yeah, or maybe even boost
that better.
that.
I can turn myself up.
That's a little better.
All right, here I'll just bump it up a tad. All right, cool. All right, I'm gonna screen share, and then So typically what we wanted to kind of show was maybe where that collaboration would start when someone is going from moving and starting the design phase, getting a general shape and form together, and how they would start to kind of share this type of geometry from a designer to an engineer and maybe back. So typically what we would have is some sort of set of basic points that we would want to work off. So here we're going with a lovely little rectangle made up of 4 different points. And what we really wanted to kind of show was how easy it was to kind of pass this geometry over and how it can start to kind of build up that collaboration. So what we're kind of just showing here is that we have 4 sets of points that are outlined here. Those are connected into a single rectangle. And then that is just passed into our little Speckle server. And that just streams that over to David, the other David, the engineer, David, who is then going to kind of take it and just kind of build off of that. And that's all from the beginning of the design phase, just getting a general outline. All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. There we go.
Right, thanks, David. Now, let me just share my screen. There we go. Move that over there. All right, so we've been hit by the curse of the demo, and the wonderfully connected data that David and I had about 20 minutes ago has gone poof. But what you see here is I've just put in the ID of the stream that David's sending and connected it into a Speckle receiver. And what you would have seen just moments ago is a rectangle and 4 points coming out. And what we do is then we take those 4 points and then connect them into the beginning of our script. And what we've got is then we drive a whole generative design process, which is giving us this particular structure. And so here what we're designing is a roof over a bocce court. This is a project that was recently built in Montreal. It wasn't David and I who collaborated, but we built this in our office here, and so we're recreating it for you. Because David didn't really give us a lot of instructions about what he wanted, the structural engineers went crazy and decided that a forest of sloping columns is the right way to go. And so we're using all of the wonderful tools within Grasshopper, including Karamba and Galapagos, to run a genetic algorithm and a solution to find an optimal structure that has truly random structural columns, but we're still, when you press on the whole, when gravity pulls the whole thing down, it doesn't lean over to one side or another. So we get to have fun. We get to use all our existing tools. And then what we're doing is we're just taking the output of that and dragging that into a Speckle sender and sending it out to a new Speckle stream. So we're not updating the same stream that David gave us. We're sending a new stream. And so I'm going to pull that up in the web viewer. So here it is in the web viewer. We can show this to our
And I
clients.
don't know that I'm seeing the web viewer. I think you're just sharing the this Rhino screen.
Geez, screen 2. Thank you. Is this better?
Yep.
Excellent. And I've got an assistant here who's going to help me with the presentation. Can you say hi?
That's life these days, right?
You bet.
We welcome those.
Yeah, and so here we've got all the geometry coming through in the web viewer. We can inspect particular elements and come see what the data is here. We can color this by the object type. So here these are showing up as meshes in the viewer. Before I throw this back to David to continue, I'm just going to bring up Arup Carbon. So Arup Carbon is a tool that we've built on top of Speckle, and what it does is it takes a Speckle stream and allows us to generate a carbon report. So what I've done here is I've opened up that stream that I've created, and it's accessible to Arup Carbon as well to anybody else on the project team to pull down. And I've associated materials from our carbon database with the materials of the objects. And so with this, I have a live interactive carbon report that I can send to my clients and say, hey, this is the total weight of carbon in this project. In this case, it's just got the steel, but if we had the concrete footings in the same stream, or even if that was in a separate stream, you can bring multiple streams into one and put together a report and have a look at a multidisciplinary carbon report. So with that data there, we're then able to everyone else on the team is able to do their part with what we're doing. And as we update it, the reports and the other stuff can be updated as well. So now that we've got our structural design there, I'm going to pass it back to David Morgan. And he's got some great stuff.
All right. So, I think once we were able to kind of get something back, one thing of a tool that we've been kind of leaning on is the ability to kind of design out different ways of engaging with like the form and the spatial complexity of how design might come together with Unity. And Speckle now does support that integration. And so one thing we've kind of shown here, and like as David mentioned previously, we've been kind of hit with the demo plague, so a lot of stuff will have to be shown in pre-built recording. But the general idea is that now that he's kind of updated this form, and for me to kind of bring something back and start to kind of build off of it, within Unity itself, I can stream this mesh in and start to have all of that geometry in here. And Unity as a platform for architects and designers is still very new. It requires a lot of training within the game engine field, but it really grants a lot of atmospheric kind of design opportunities. And so one of the things that we've kind of used for that is kind of this idea of being able to design out what like a parametric facade might look like. And I'm just going to reference a quick screenshot because, breaking things is kind of part of the process, right? So, so here you can kind of see, if we zoom in. So this is kind of a brush that we first originally had built for doing facades, and we were aiming to have this kind of shown for the idea of a roof. But the idea was that if you could go into this immersive tool, and once you're streaming this geometry over, we could start to do, have kind of create a platform for us to be able to modify how some of the design might work within like the sun and shade of the shade coming in within this pavilion. So you can see that this is just a simple brush that's changing the density of the patterning, and it's going along the sides of what those original 4 points were kind of isolating that geometry for. So this is kind of showing these 3 different layers that allow us to kind of build up and have these parts of the design actually start to be in sync with each other, rather than having to always rebuild and have something kind of isolated within its own model. So this is kind of an exciting little point for us because it helps us create an engaging and more interactive tool for design. And I'm going to stop my share. Cool.
And so just to give you guys the flavor of what was working when we were practicing on Monday is that David in Boston was moving points around in a Rhino. And then 5 seconds later, the structural model, in this case, it wasn't actually doing analysis, but as soon as that analysis was done, it was recreating the structural model just based on those 4 points, pushing it back out to Speckle. And so in a total time of about 15 seconds from David moving his setting out geometry, he was getting a revised structural model back. And so, if we're actually doing the calculations, it might take, 20 or 25 seconds. But for those of you architects out there, I know that it's not very often that you update the geometry and you get a structural BIM model back within a minute or so. But these workflows allow us to have a really, really tight turnaround and look at a lot more options in a lot more detail.
Now I have to ask, do you know what broke today for the live? I mean, it's a live demo, so things like this happen. But any thoughts on what may have gotten disconnected?
We noticed that it broke as the YouTube was going live. So, just so you know, it's a bit of a detail. In Speckle, you can have layers on your stream. So we had a point on every layer. And then that initial stream sort of collapsed back to one stream. And the joy of Grasshopper is that when the parameters change, it disconnects everything. So,
and there was also some issues. We were finding some issues with like that Unity wasn't actually updating the meshes in the proper cache. So I think there was, there's something for us to kind of keep debugging and to make it a little bit more straightforward with that process. But I do want to mention, as someone that doesn't really have a development background, I was trained to draw a little bit more than to code at all. For me to be engaging with someone through Speckle would have like no requirements within code, and I think the ability to get up and running was seamless, and just getting started together was really simple, and like it really kind of promoted a quick collaboration for us to kind of understand how to like take this and move on and kind of get the ideas flowing. So
yeah, I was actually kind of wondering, I having never set up like a Speckle server. If we were right now to say, oh, let's start a new one of these models. You already have a server set up, so maybe we skip that for a second. But you're setting up a new model, setting up a new ID. What would that process look like? And is it something we could walk through live, or is it more than that for setting up? And obviously we were already having some issues. But if we were to to set that up, if someone was to try to set that up, what would that look like?
We could walk through it live, but if you're familiar with Grasshopper, it's a matter of clicking from the sender, or here Izzy showing it in Revit. In Grasshopper, you click the sender component, you drop it onto your canvas, it asks you to select a server, and you've created a sender.
I mean, if we're able to, I think it would be really, really compelling. Because I know it's just Grasshopper. You're like, it's just Grasshopper, but there's IDs and there's the specific Speckle pieces that you have to start thinking about when you're creating these and then starting to send things. So if you want to take the risk after it's already out, not worked once, I'm looking at the chat to see if that's something that they want as well. Because
I don't know if it's if you guys want, but we could literally just start the process of sending the 4 points over again.
Yeah, I think let's do that.
Okay.
I'm looking at the chat here. I'm not seeing any responses yet, so maybe everyone fell asleep. But if I see a +1 or a hands up, we'll keep going.
They're just so amazed by the background music, I think.
We cut that.
I don't want to interrupt your screen share, Izzy.
No worries. I was just putting this on the background while we're talking because, live demos, you always have a video backup. So I had the video here of just an example of sending a stream of data from Revit into the Speckle viewer and then receiving it in Grasshopper right now. And you were talking about like sort of the Speckle intricacies. So one of the things that is like the selling point of these connectors is that like you don't really have to worry about the Speckle intricacies. The Speckle object is sort of like a neutral JSON object. Basically, it's just raw text, and these connectors do all that conversion for you. So you can build your own connectors. We have some already, like Rhino, Grasshopper, Dynamo. We also have Unity, Excel. And those are community contributions as well. Blender as well. And basically, you just plug in what you want to send, and if the connector is able to convert it, it'll convert it into just a raw JSON object, and it'll send it over to the server. And then you can receive whatever that is and convert that back into whatever native software that you want to receive that in. So I can stop this video real quick. If David and David would like to recreate their demo right now, go ahead.
Yeah, for sure. Let's try it. All right,
Yeah, let's
see.
try it,
Okay.
right? And I see the
Let's do this.
chat's
Let's
ready,
go, guys.
and there's still
All
40.
right.
You know, there's 46 other people watching this.
All right,
Ready.
we got this.
You know,
Okay,
drum roll.
So I'm just I'll delete everything besides the rectangle.
And while you're setting this up, just FYI, Izzy, the screen share coming from you is pretty fuzzy, but David, yours is looking crisp. So
right,
just thoughts as
clean.
we're sharing different screens.
All right, cool. All right, so I'm gonna delete this stuff. So I'm just gonna assume everyone knows what
everyone knows how to
points and
create
everything.
points. Everyone's
Cool,
at least
cool.
a basic Grasshopper user.
All right,
if
all
not,
right, so
we'll go to Grasshopper 101, but that's a different stream.
okay, so I'm not like, you know, this, we're not going to touch on like every single thing you need to do to get things set up, but I just wanted to show how easy it was for me to send those 4 points over, right? So right here, I dropped down a data sender, which is just part of a, you know, it's just a stream that we're bringing up. And this kind of has all that information within it. So you can see that there's parameters, you can add in more and as you please. So we have 4 points and we're going to send those 4 over. So we'll just leave them as A, B, and C, and I'm just going to drag these pieces over here.
And they get named with the name of the component title?
Yeah, well, you can go in here and just change it. So if you wanted to name it like top left, top right.
Yeah, we don't need to do that, but that's how the names go through.
No, we do need to do that.
Oh,
we're doing it
on my end.
Top
So
left.
I mean, this is part of it too, right? So
this is live. This is exactly.
Communication and so the stream names can be expressive. The data itself can be expressive.
And we're sending in one component, but I just want to state the obvious that, you know, that there could be a list of lists probably going into, or at least a list of data going into every one of those inputs.
Yep. Absolutely. And if you don't need to organize it, you just dump everything on one layer.
Yeah. So usually sorry to interrupt you.
No, you're good. Keep going.
Cool. So basically, right, we have like kind of gone through, and anytime, like David was saying, this is named, it's going to show up in the stream. So if we just brought down a data sender, so this is a data receiver, we can just pipe in what it's asking for, which is what's the stream ID. And the stream ID is just a simple set of, it's just a string, a set of letters, and then it's telling us what those parameters are. So we can see every type of point and what that, you know, what the label is for that point, but we actually aren't passing anything in. So all I'm going to do now is make sure I'm doing this right, because that would be embarrassing. And there goes my career. And so basically, now that we have that, we just pass all of these points back into the stream. And all I'm going to do now is say, hey, David, not talking to myself, but do you want to check out these 4 points I made? They're super sweet, super cool, and they might not fail. So I'm going to take that and I'll just pass it to you in Slack, because.
And did that make a new unique ID, or is that the same ID that is?
It's a new
repeatedly used.
It's a new ID. So anytime you drop this down, and Izzy, if you feel like I'm just explaining this terribly, just let me know. But
no, go ahead.
anytime you drop this stream down, it creates a singular node with that ID that's unique to that stream. So a lot of the times I feel like this was something really hard for me to grasp, because most of the time in Grasshopper, you know, we always kind of do like this copy and paste, but realistically that's actually just copying every single stream, copying that singular stream. And what's really kind of the unique part is each time you actually drop a fresh stream down, it creates a unique ID. So there's like a, you know, it's kind of like a new instance of a Speckle stream. I probably just shouldn't have talked about that last part, but so yeah, so now that unique ID is there, and passing it over to David. Hopefully, David, you were able to grab this and play with it and have fun.
Let me share.
Okay, pressure's on.
All right, so this is what I've got before. I've got a receiver, and unlike the sender, the receiver doesn't store anything internally. So I can just paste in the new stream ID and hit OK. And it refreshed. Fantastic. Now I've got my top left, top right, bottom left. And so now I've got my script, and things are in a different order, which is why it's important to name things. It's going to bring those in here. Top right, and bottom right. Now let's have a look at the preview as it updates. So I think I've got these. Oh, I've got my bottom right and my bottom left mixed up. That would explain
Just trying to keep you on your toes, man.
Exactly. There we go. And so here it
Nice.
is. So now, David, can you move some of your geometry there?
Yeah. All right, coming in with the big move. Oh, it's internalized. Hold on. Wait. Let me. Sorry, give me 1 second. Need to actually bake these into.
No worries. While you're waiting for this, have you guys smashed that like button? Help us out here. But I'm glad to see this live, and I think I have tons of other questions that I want to keep going with, and I'm watching things come in as in the chat as questions come in that we can also hit. So we just watched that update live. Just to note, David, you're in Boston.
Yep.
David did Koning, you're in Montreal. That's right, Montreal.
Exactly.
And
so, and just FYI, if I come back to the stream here online, the online viewer says, "Hey, this got updated," and it gives me an opportunity to refresh. And now, so this is the data that is now coming out. And so I'm going to stop sharing.
All right. So next question.
Go back.
No, you have something else? All right, next question. So you showed this 10-digit thing. That makes me think of Zoom and the security bombing that they used to, or the Zoom bombing that they used to face. I just want to, I know that's not a problem. Well, I assume it's not a problem with Speckle. Can you talk a little bit about the server setup and security, and what does it take for someone to get that server set up? Is it public? Is it somewhere that everyone can access the same server? How does that work?
Go for it, Izzy. I can take that. Sure. So I have logged out of my server, so I'm just going in fresh so you can see this. But basically a server, you can set it up however you want, but you have to have an account to log into your server, obviously. So there's like that layer. But if, for example, right now we're using the Hestia test server, which we can see here. So let me log in real quick. So the server URL is already put in here. Hestia is just run by Dimitri, who works at Speckle, but it's just for basically trying it out. If you don't want to deploy your own server yet, you just want to play around, see how stuff works. So for example, if I go in here, you can log in, and if you create a stream, edit a project, you can go in here and you can manage the stream in this viewer, so you don't have to have any sort of application downloaded. You can just go online, look at the viewer, and here you can add permissions, so you can turn link sharing on, which is basically sort of like with Google Docs or something. If you share a document and you want to make it public, you just share the link with whoever you want. But you can also turn this off, so the server, so the stream can only be accessed by the people you invite to edit it or review it. So as you can see, these are the people that have access to our stream right now.
So in their Grasshopper components, it's picking up their username and it's logging them in under their user identification.
So if you want to download, if you download Speckle clients, you can use Speckle in your actual software applications locally. And when you do that, so there's this one simple installer to get all the current connectors in their most recent version. But once you do that, you have to log in to an account locally. You can have multiple accounts, but it'll use your default account. And then it connects to that to be able to authenticate you through the token on that account locally, and then you can only access streams that obviously are either public or you have access to. So if you try to put in a stream ID for someone else's private stream, you'll just get an error. Nothing will show up.
So no Speckle bombing. That's a bad term.
No Speckle bombing.
Probably shouldn't use that. But anyways, so you guys showed a little bit about how to interact with 4 points, which I get for a live demo. That's really helpful. Now, and you also used Rhino and, I'm sorry, was it 3ds Max? Unity on the back end, and the web viewer to kind of look at these pieces. A lot of the people who are watching this, they work day-to-day documentation in, you guessed it, but in Revit. What does the interaction look like once you get into building components and you're looking at like a full building, or is it only 4 points?
It's much more than 4 points.
All right. You want to keep going with that, David?
Yeah. So Speckle has a object model called Speckle Elements, which follows pretty closely to the Revit. So you can send Revit data in and out directly from Revit. And the way Speckle works, Izzy, correct me if I'm wrong, but if it brings in a new object with new data, and that object is already in Revit, it will not delete it and update it. It's going to add the data to that element. So what you can do is you can actually send partial elements in that don't have all the data, but if you just want to update 1 or 2 parameters, you can send in a Speckle object that just has those 2 parameters, and you can update that. And so I know that there's some of my colleagues, and perhaps some of you on the line, have had automation solutions that will update a Revit model by deleting everything and starting it and putting it in again, which kills all your tagging and all your visuals and everything. It's terrible. So Speckle tries to focus on communicating and allowing you to preserve your downstream work.
And how is the sharing different when you're talking about not just 4 points, but you're talking about like a more complete geometry? You talked a little bit about the different elements, but yeah, can you talk a little bit more about that? Maybe somebody else or yourself.
I will throw this to Izzy.
Who's got a screen share for everything?
I've got a screen share. Let's see if this GIF will load though. Hello? Will this GIF load for me? There we go. So basically the interaction is, so yes, the interaction within Revit is supposed to be pretty simple. So I know people who work in Revit don't always also work in Rhino and Grasshopper, or sorry, in Grasshopper and Dynamo. So this is meant to be very more like visually simple to use. So you can go in, you can filter the objects, and so this is all doing the local Revit object model. So you can filter by different types of object. You can just add objects by your selection, or you can filter by specific view, and then you send that to Speckle just by sending the send button within the little connector here. So this just shows up in the ribbon button. You can press it and run it. I can't run it for you right now because I have 2.0 on my machine, but hopefully this GIF kind of shows that it's pretty easy. You can search by parameters or search by tags on here. And basically, you don't really have to worry about the object model yourself because the connector, as I said earlier, does the conversion for you. So it converts everything that it has. So we have like the conversions for not every type of Revit element, but most Revit elements that people use. But you can also create your own if you need extra ones that aren't existing here, or if you have like specific families that are specific to your company or to your workflow that you need or are very critical for your projects. And basically, once you've written those and you've given that Speckle kit to the connector, then it can do that for you. The user who's actually using the connector doesn't have to deal with that. They just select what they want, send it, and then it does the conversion for you. And then you go into the web viewer and you see basically the same thing. Every Speckle or every Revit element that's converted to Speckle objects gets its own visual mesh, so you can see it in the Speckle viewer as well, as we saw with the 4 points and the pavilion that we were building earlier with the 2 Davids.
And we were talking about these object models.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about those custom object models? Like if, for example, like you were talking, you already have things set up for Revit. You already have things set up for Rhino. I saw Mateo put in the comments that you guys are working on an Excel connector. What does it look like for someone who wants to expand a connector you're working on? Because a lot of the people who watch this, like we try to stay away from the like BIM only topics because there's so much stuff already about that. And the people that are going to attract to this are the people who are the innovators. They're the pushers. They may not be really solid software developers, but they're probably visual programmers. So are we talking for that crowd? Is it as much as like putting it into JSON and explaining what the difference is between like a Revit parameter and your Speckle parameter? Or can you talk about that object model a little bit? Or maybe that's the magic sauce.
I can speak a little bit to that, yeah. Well, in 1.0, it's a little different 2.0, but I'll speak just to 1.0. So in 1.0, basically, there are like specific Speckle parameters that go onto every object just for more like identification and for viewing. So there's the mesh, which displays the visual in the 3D viewer online. And then there's some like a hash, an ID, stuff like that for identification. And then like stuff like points and lines, these like very basic things. But pretty much any Revit parameter can go into it because you can also add all these like ancillary properties like family name, flow, like airflow velocity, like stuff like that, and just attach those as parameters to the Speckle object. The Speckle object doesn't really care. You can add as many as you want that you need for these objects to make them like encompass all the data that you need, and then send them back and forth. And then the only thing that is really important for the viewer is a mesh, which pretty much any 3D application should be able to convert. And then the properties can be whatever you need. And then rolling, David can talk a bit more about like expanding them in Dynamo and Grasshopper as users,
Yep.
but also in software. You can look at there's like several, the Speckle core geometry, which is like the basic objects, and there's a bunch of Speckle kits, as we call them, built on top of that you can look on in our GitHub and have a look at how they're done, and then have a hand at trying them out yourself and trying to roll your own if you need to as well. So take it away, David.
Sure. So there's two big ways that people within Arup have expanded the kit, and the first one is, of the three kits that are there in open source, one of them is the structural kit, and that's a kit for finite element models. And we just wrote that because we wanted to use Speckle with our finite element models. So we wrote that and we shared that out with the community. So that's the one thing you can do. However, if maybe you're just on a project and you just want to say, hey guys, let's all agree to use the ID, use these parameters. It's really important that the client really cares about the temperature of everything. Sorry, random example. So let's just make sure there's a property called temperature on everything. And so within Dynamo and within Grasshopper, you can attach custom properties to any Speckle object. And the Speckle server very happily passes that through. You can color by that in the web viewer, and then receiving scripts can use that. So that's sort of the first level. And so we had a project, we were working with Heatherwick Studio on a very intense glass facade. We had our facade team and our structures team. And the manager, the BIM manager of that project, who was setting up the workflow, set up on every stream, there were 3 or 4 key streams, and said, okay, on this stream, these objects have these 3 parameters. They were just parameters that we set up in Grasshopper and everyone was able to use. So even on a project level, you can set up your own language and your own parameters, and it's quite simple.
And open source doesn't necessarily mean free. So could someone walk me through at what point you're paying and what is because obviously Speckle is its own company. It's not a nonprofit. It exists. It needs to support its team. So what does that pay structure look like for people who are working with it?
Yeah, so you're right. Speckle is its own company, but at the moment there isn't like a Speckle as a service thing that you can pay us to do. In the future, that'll probably come. We'll probably be able to deploy your servers, manage your servers, help you with setup, and help you with setting up different workloads and troubleshooting and stuff like that. But at the moment, everything is open source. You can deploy your own server. So I guess you can pay for your internal IT department to set up a server. You can pay DigitalOcean or AWS or wherever to host your server. You can use our web viewer to access your server. You don't have to use Hestia on the web viewer. And yeah, you can basically pay with investing in your internal development teams, internal software developers, internal IT to get this set up and get people trained up. Or there's not a whole lot of training, but get the basic server set up so that you have your own secure private server, not the test server. And just get people using it. All you have to do after you've set up the server is get your engineers' accounts, and then they can start going at it, sending data back and forth from wherever they need.
And one of the questions that came in is how long is the data stream available? But I also want to add to that, because I believe it's going to be answered in the same question, is who owns that data? Where does that server live?
I can answer that.
So 3 questions there,
Yeah.
but I think they're all answered by one.
Yeah, so
Go for it.
Your data's there forever. The way Speckle works under the hood is every object gets stored, and when you change it, it just stores a new version of that object and updates the index of your stream. So your data is always there. Not only is your latest version of your data always there, every version of your data is always there. And so for us, being able to look back at the history of how a design has progressed is super, super useful. Who owns the data? Well, whoever runs the server. So at Arup, we've decided to deploy a number of servers worldwide so that we have servers close by to all our staff. They sit in Amazon, so we're comfortable with from the cloud side, but it's within our cloud service that we run, that we store that data. So we maintain the ownership of that.
All right. I think there's a question that just has to be asked, and that is that these types of interoperability tools have existed. I won't name others, but there's been other ones that have also come out of structural engineering companies. Um, like, can you talk a little bit about Speckle's current relationship with Arup, um, and yeah, and what that looks like, because you're separate, right? Can you talk
Yeah.
a little bit about that, and who your other, you mentioned, you showed that screenshot. I actually took the screenshot while I was on the screen. I think it was live. Me taking a screen of like Big and BVN and all these other companies that are using Speckle. Can you talk a little bit more about who your clients are, and yeah, what the relationship is with Air specifically? Because I think that's a question that comes up regularly. And I'm looking, if there's any other questions, drop them in the chat. We're getting close to wrapping up. But thank you very much.
Izzy, I don't know if you want to go first, or I can jump in.
I think you can answer this.
Okay.
I feel like you have a personally good way to answer this.
So I know some of you think that Arup is the big bad engineering firm that's all over the world. The view from the inside is a little bit different, but actually, the relationship between Speckle and Arup is best described as we're friends, and it's really not much more. We don't have a formal partnership at this point. Dimitri and Matteo worked for us for a couple of years, and for then at that point it was maybe a little fuzzy there. What is the relationship? Now it's very clear. The Speckle open source project is run by Speckle Systems, and Arup is a user of, at this point, Speckle 1.0. And so this is actually something that's really cool about the fact that Speckle is open source. Is Dimitri and Matteo and Izzy are focused on Speckle 2.0, and I'm looking at Speckle inside of Arup, and we've got projects that are running on Speckle, and we have to deployment, we have to manage. And so we're not, Speckle 2.0 is not ready for us. And yet there's features that we need. So our internal development team is continuing to work on 1.0. And you can look under Arup-group on GitHub and see the work we've done. We've updated the server this week and rolled that out to our internal servers. We've got we're making some changes to the Grasshopper client specifically for people, sort of aimed at people who are building structural models. And again, the work we're doing is open source. We talk with Speckleworks and say, hey, we made some changes. Do you want them? And for the moment, the focus there really stays on 2.0. But we're collaborating, and we all really believe in the vision of Speckle for Arup. We're not just using Speckle for interoperability. It's sort of come for the interoperability, stay for the fact that your teams are connected, and you can now have services that run. So we're working on ways to be able to update a Speckle stream and have a structural analysis happen automatically in the cloud. And so using Speckle to enable some really great next-gen workflows.
Yeah, thanks. David Morgan, anything to add to that conversation? Because you're at Sasaki, right? You're an architectural company.
Well, it's a little bit more than just architecture. We have it's actually more focused towards urban design and landscape. That's how it started off, and it's been kind of growing. So
my apologies.
Don't worry. Should have noted that earlier. But kind of what's been nice about integrating Speckle into our workflow has been that it's been really easy for us to approach it. We do have a small development team of people that are either self-trained or have a bit of like computer science background, but it's really a lot of people trying to understand how to make something themselves. And Speckle's been fantastic for us to just start building up the layers that we need in order to actually produce a prototype or get an understanding of how we can utilize the tool. So it's helpful to have those resources to fall back on, but when you're kind of just trying to test and get something to work from team to team, you might not have like a coder in your back pocket to reach to. So
yeah, and I think that's a situation for a lot of companies.
Yeah, so I think what's been nice is just like even with the little bit of experience I've had the last couple of years building like Unity tools, it's been nice to kind of test the different grounds of what we could do with streaming. But when it came down for like integrating something, Speckle just was really flexible, and it had a lot of the same language that we wanted to work off of, and we could customize it to fit our own needs. But when we started to customize it and just getting it to work, we didn't have to create our own C# project or anything. We just went right from Grasshopper and just kept working off of that. So There's a ton of benefits with just, being someone that's more of a visual scripter or working in Rhino and Revit, where, it's stuff right out of the box. It welcomes you to like learn it and go through that learning curve. But, I think it's really allowing the natural conversation and collaboration kind of form how we want the tool to work
So
for
you're kind
us.
of talking about it more as kind of a data backend to any kind of design that you're working on is almost how I'm hearing it. Like not just interop, but it's the back end that's going to hold your model. That's not necessarily BIM 360 or
Yeah.
or another
Well, I would.
space.
I mean, I think a lot of the times that I find like when we are trying to help with understanding the best strategies for teams to deploy when sharing models is, everyone's like exporting out the Rhino model or like a OBJ or an FBX, and then having to redo a lot of that work that they've, went through painfully in AutoCAD or SketchUp or Rhino. So those transfers are, that's something where it's like a growing pain, and we need to kind of have a solution that allows us to stream something over and not have to constantly restart our work.
Yeah.
Because right now in the current state, sharing something and having like a point where someone can modify and see those results come back and have that change is just not there. So I think there is a lot of opportunity for, people that are at either have no experience or little experience with coding to really jump in and actually like have a great impact, not on just what Speckle is, but what they can do with Speckle in their own workflow.
And at Sasaki, how do you decide how much to send? Like,
Yeah,
right? Because like we worked with 4 points, and then we recreated the entire model. Alternatively,
yeah.
we could have created the entire model and sent all the lines
Hmm.
based on what I'm understanding. How do you decide, like, this is the amount that we want to interoperate with? This is the amount we want on the back end. This is what we want just in the script creating. Can you talk about
Yeah.
that? How you do that at
Um,
Sasaki?
Yeah, I mean, so we do have our own private server that we've been using to kind of understand how we can best sculpt this to work. So we were like it's kind of a weird answer for this question, because the thing that we've been relying on Speckle a lot is building out our view analysis tool that just kind of gives us understanding of the view opportunities within our designs. And that requires some really big meshes, and we've had to build our own script to actually import into terrains and have like something with like, high quality meshes in that sense. But these meshes end up being like 4 to 5 miles long within Rhino, and that just is, those are huge meshes, and we're still able to pipe most of that through our own private server. So that's where it starts to, you can get away with a lot of stuff you're doing in the public server just to get up and running. But when you finally realize where's the pain points and things you need to improve on to make your workflow better, that's where it's like you can kind of invest into that private server, and it's not like a huge lift. But we are sending really large meshes that are just really wide in space, and I'm pretty sure anyone that's like out there doing game engine stuff wants to like shut me down because it's just ridiculous to have a 4 mile long mesh in
Yeah.
Unity. But
So
whatever.
Izzy, I'm just gonna move on to the next
No,
question
go for
here.
it.
As like, it's great. We're getting a couple other ones. But for someone who's really minimal, and maybe you're not the right person, so David, feel free to jump in and be like, no, I'm the right person for this question. But if someone who minimally wants to get involved in actually helping the Speckle open source data platform, they're doing some coding, maybe, but they're not, um, contributing regularly to every open source project. What way could that person help out? And then on the other end, like if someone's really a intense software developer, where where's the best place for them to help out, and what would getting connected into that look like?
That's a really great question. I will share my screen so we can look at GitHub real quick. Um, second. So at the moment, like I mentioned earlier, we're sort of in this where we 1.0 is like a full stable product. 2.0 is the new project that we're working on. So that's probably where we're going to be wanting contributions or wanting people to get involved. Just as a start for someone who's kind of new to Speckle, wants to hack around, as everything all the data is just like plain JSON. You can start by just like having a look in the viewer and looking at your raw data. So you can either, like David was showing earlier, you can have a look in here, but also if you want to kind of explore the API, you can do that right here. If you just go to API streams and then, oh, sorry. Sorry, 1 minute. Let's open up this stream. There we go.
And it really passes things around in JSON objects. Is that kind of the back end of most things? And then the geometry somehow gets parsed into some kind of textual format so that it can be recreated again?
Yep, so the conversion to native really depends on the software platform that you're using. But I just wanted to kind of show here that it's pretty simple to look at if you want to like start getting familiar with the schema. So for example, here's the whole stream. These are the objects. So just API/streams into the beginning of the URL before your stream ID, and you'll be able to see that. You can also have a look at the objects. Just for the hackers out there who are curious. So for example, this is just one of the basic lines in there. That was one of the columns in the stream. And then let me show you the Speckleworks GitHub organization, which is 1.0. So these are literally everything we have is here. So everything in 1.0 is available for you to look at. A really easy place to start would probably be PySpeckle, since Python is pretty. I feel like a lot of people are familiar with Python, at least generally, and getting started with Speckle in Python is pretty simple. So for example, if I show you here, like this simple Python script here is really all you need to, ooh, my mouse, hello, to access your data from Speckle. So for example, here you're just creating, you can pip install Speckle, and then you've got all the stuff that you need. So you just create a client, you log in either with your email and password or with a JSON web token. And then you can access
and we're just seeing your
parse
web.
through the stream.
We're just seeing your website right now.
Oh, sorry.
No
Hold
worries.
on. How about now?
It's coming across. You're good.
Cool. So sorry, my point here was just that it's super easy to get started with Python. If I know a lot of people using Dynamo Grasshopper are already familiar with Python, this is really all you need to get your object from the server, just with your stream ID, down into Python. And you can parse through the object however you want. And then once you have the data, obviously you can do whatever you want with it. You can have a look at the schema yourself, or you can, I don't know, manipulate the data. This script just like creates some random plots that you can see, just to like emphasize that really you can do whatever you want. Let's wait for this to load.
And
So
those demos and those samples are all on the GitHub page. That looks a lot like Matplotlib.
This is Matplotlib. Simple and easy. Yes, so documentation for Python is all there. You can have a look. And then if you go into the docs, you can have a look at our schema. Oh, I can move this. Excellent. So this is just from the website. You can have a look at the actual object schema if you want to have a look through this and get familiar with all the different endpoints and the schemas for the objects. And then for 2.0, and this is probably where people who are interested in contributing can start to get familiar. 2.0 is in early developer alpha, so you can have a look right now. What's public is the core, the server, and the objects. So core is basically the .NET SDK. Server is what we were looking at. So basically 2.0's version of the web viewer and the server backend for Speckle. And then object is a very basic object model. So it doesn't have everything, but it has some simple conversions for our Revit Grasshopper and is Ryan on there? I think it's just Revit Dynamo Grasshopper at the moment.
Cool. I think that's really helpful. And with that, I'm gonna close this and just say, everyone, thank you so much. Thank you, speakers. Thank you all the people contributed to the chat. We will see you next week with another session on BIM Forge viewers on BIM 360. So, all right. With that, see you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.